Welcome back to Black News Tonight. It is time to talk about what is happening in the digital streets across social media. People everywhere have been celebrating the life and legacy of music icon Tupac Shakur. Today would have been his 50th birthday. Pac, a multi-platinum and award-winning artist who died at just 25 years old on September 13th, 1996, drew in waves of people with his voice. He also inspired many people to dream and hope for better days. Joining me now to break down Tupac's impact is poet and organizer Monet and Dr. Mark Anthony Neal, the James B. Duke Professor of African and African American Studies at Duke University. Thank you both for joining the show. The first thing that got social media going today, y'all, was this video that was trending. It was Hollywood star Jada Pinkett Smith posting a clip of herself yesterday reading from a previously unseen poem by her longtime friend, Tupac. And of course, that was based on his birthday being today. I'm gonna start with the poet in residence, Monet. When you heard those words, when you see Tupac's work, what does it make you think? What does it make you feel?
I think Tupac embodies the true revolutionary spirit of the cultural worker and the artist in society. He was an organizer primarily first because of the culture and the ways that he was brought up, the mother that he was raised by. But he embodied the best, I think, of hip hop, which is the ability to marry the spirit, the truth telling, the impact and the fire of the word with poetic technique. And he captivated our people in a direction towards self determination. And so I think when you see his poems, what it reminds you is that this is someone that actually had a skill set with language and studied language and saw themselves, yes, as a rapper and an MC, but also as a writer and as a poet. And so seeing his words on a page, I think, transforms how people think about the craft of writing a song or a rap or an MC writing.
Mark, who was Tupac as an artist, as a musician?
I mean, he was first and foremost an artist. I think he ends up becoming a rapper because rap was the vehicle for him to be able to express himself in that moment. There's no question that when you see his gifts on stage, his gifts on screen, that this was someone who was destined for something much more than just simply being a rapper. And there's nothing wrong with just being a rapper, but that was just his launch pad in terms of rap music, right? And this was someone who was a thinker. He was a tremendous reader. He was a strategic thinker as well as theoretical, and those are all the things to bear that he brought to the table in his music. I often wonder, in his absence, how the music might have developed, how the culture might have developed if he would have still been around to be an elder statesman.
That's an interesting question. I have a somewhat unpopular opinion about Tupac, at least in some circles. I think that Pac may be the most overrated rapper we've ever seen, but at the same time, I think he may be the most important rapper we've ever produced. I think he may be the greatest artist that hip hop culture has ever produced. And so, for me, it's a very interesting balancing act. I mean, Aja, feel free to respond to that, but also, who would Pac have been had he not been killed tragically 25 years ago?
I think we'll never know, but what we do know is the tradition he comes from. I think it's important for us as Black people and as folks who are organizing in this moment, who are thinking critically about our liberation and our freedom and the art that we make, that we produce out of that, is what tradition do we follow? I think everybody wants to be the people, the owners of their own ideas and believe that they came up in the world alone. But we all know that we come through a legacy and a tradition. And what's unique about Tupac is that he names and continued to name up until his death the role that his mother played and the Black Panther Party and his political, the left politics that he was raised up under. I would say that to call Tupac overrated is a grave insecurity on your part, Mark, because some can say the same for you. But what I'll say about Tupac is he was named after a great chief revolutionary in South America and a leader of one of the greatest uprisings against colonial power. So he was set for greatness. I think in his name and in the ideas that his mother instilled in him as a young boy, we see that when we plant those sort of ideas in our children, who they grow up to be, and the sort of thought patterns that they have that disrupt the Western white patriarchal supremacist ideals, that's the kind of thought minds that we need. So when we talk about Tupac as a rapper and as an MC and as a poet and an artist, we're talking about someone that injected ideas and truth telling and language in a way that forced our communities to start to look at ourselves differently, to start to talk about ourselves differently, to be honest and open and vulnerable in ways that we never were. This is somebody who said they got money for wars, but they can't feed the poor, right? How hard is that for somebody to say? Yet and still, he said it at a time where people weren't saying it. He said, if he can't learn to love you, you should leave him, right? And, these are things that, like, at that time, is a feminist radical idea, telling Black women, hey, if you're not being loved, you should leave him. He said, change does it take skill to be real, time to heal each other. He's talking about Black people collectivism and thinking of, these are things that now we are starting to, that are in the popular mainstream conversation, right? But at his time and in his era, he was ahead of the game. And I think he helped spark so much of the change that we need to see in the minds that are currently a part of leadership right now.
Mark, one of the things we see with Tupac that I find interesting when I remember looking at footage of him at an art school in Baltimore, right? And he was gentle, he was vulnerable. And then you get from there to Hit 'Em Up, right? It's such an interesting analysis of masculinity and Black masculinity. Tupac was capable of so much, and the very things that made us adore him and the things that Aja just laid out are stand in some ways contrast to this other part of Pac that lured him into other places. And so how does Tupac help us understand Black masculinity in all of its possibilities and all of its constraints? And I know that's a complicated question to ask you with the minute I got left.
But you see it in the photographs, right? The soft eyes, the softness, the vulnerability that you see in him. But, he's in an industry at the time that wants to place him and Black men in a box, right? And there's no way for to be a more nuanced view. I mean, think of the way that people reacted to a damn near 50-year-old Jay-Z talking about going to therapy 4 years ago. And think about what the reaction is to Jay-Z in 2017 versus what Tupac could have been in 1996. So even now, the beauty of Tupac, right, and I'm going to sign on with you, Mark, right? If we had this conversation 10 years ago, I'm not putting Tupac in a top 20 in any kind of context, right? But the idea of Tupac was... The idea of Tupac was so much more expansive than who Tupac was, right? The way that we invested in the idea of Tupac was about an aspirational quality about who the best of we could be, right, as Black folks in hip hop and obviously in terms of Black masculinity. And I think ultimately that's far more important, this aspirational sense of Tupac, than anything that he actually laid down on wax.
Absolutely. Well, we want to wish Tupac a happy 50th birthday. I can't believe that Tupac will be 50. I don't know where the last 25 years went, man, but it has been incredible that he has a legacy that endures, that a whole new generation of people have been able to appreciate him, to engage him, to take his work seriously, to take his legacy seriously. It is a powerful thing. It's heartbreaking that we have to say rest in peace to Pac, rest in peace to Afeni, rest in peace to Shock G. But it's a joy that we're able to engage them and take them seriously and have them rest in peace, even if enemies, Hennessy isn't my favorite type of rhyme patterns. Anyway, Aja, Mark, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody, up next.